Get started. You are unmuted. Very good. All right, it is 5:02 p.m. We're ready to start the June 13th, 2023 Appropriations Committee meeting. Today we're here specifically to speak about Ordinance 2023-058, which is the Project Hat Trick Infrastructure Investment. And you all remember that from our council meeting last Tuesday, a week ago, we had some discussion around this appropriation and the idea of having a little bit more detail given in the actual ordinance in case this project does not go through. Because as we all know, once we appropriate money, the money's appropriated, unless, of course, the administration de-appropriates it. And actually, we can kind of head off some of that with the appropriate language, I think. So, with all that said, any questions? Thank you to the guests that have come along with us today. Mayor?
Yeah, so
turn it over to you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate your time. So just real quick, did want to go over just some background. So we've been working with Jobs Ohio, Findlay Hancock County Economic Development, and the Ohio Department of Transportation. As you guys are aware, when a company is looking to expand, they typically hire a site selector to kind of go through and evaluate different locations for the potential investment. With that, they have narrowed down, we've provided a variety of information, and the city of Findlay is kind of one of their top locations for potential investment. With that, they shared with us that to be able to make the investment, there were some infrastructure needs that were going to need to be addressed. So one thing I have received some questions from the public on concerns related to it being a Chinese company. So I did just want to state that it's an American family-owned company. We do know who the company is. That's just something that can't be made publicly available at this point in time. They are a food preparation and distribution business that would be expanding in the Midwest. I believe they have significant presence across the U.S. What is requested of the city of Findlay is financial support for roadway reconfiguration and expansion, as well as water, sewer, and storm infrastructure. I did want to note that the total infrastructure investment that would be necessary is closer to $4.4 million. The Ohio Department of Transportation, as well as Jobs Ohio, have both made commitments that the company would have to accept in mid-July to be able to receive those grant funds. The city then would be making an investment of approximately $3 million with a payback period estimated based off of their withholding income tax, so not even with their business income tax, but with their withholding income tax and water and sewer, our repayment would be about 6 years. So a great return on investment. It would be about $500,000 from the storm sewer fund, $700,000 from general fund, $900,000 from sewer, and $900,000 from water fund. So based off of the feedback in the prior council meeting, the concerns that I heard were tying the funds specifically to Project Hat Trick so that the funds couldn't be spent if the project didn't move forward without coming back to council and having further discussion, as well as ensuring accountability with the development occurring as it's been presented to us. So I put together some draft language. I did run this language. This is pretty broad, but I think it addresses what we need. I did run it past economic development. They did discuss it with the site selector, and they felt comfortable with this language. They did also discuss a little bit, which we can hit on in a moment, related to clawbacks, but they weren't going to be able to have an answer before today on what they would feel comfortable with. So I'll read it to you guys. I know you guys hate when I read things, but we're so related to tying the funding specifically to Project Hat Trick. Whereas Regional Growth Partnership, the Ohio Department of Transportation, and Findlay Hancock County Economic Development have been in discussions with American family-owned business interested in building a new facility to house their food preparation and distribution operations. Whereas the potential project, Project Hat Trick, is expected to provide over $37 million in payroll by year 3, with an average salary of $58,000 and an initial capital investment of approximately $150 million. So then looking at the ensuring accountability, whereas for the city to begin construction on infrastructure improvements as discussed with Jobs Ohio, the city must receive a copy of the executed Jobs Ohio grant agreement. So that kind of ties in some of that clawback provision, because Jobs Ohio does have specific language on the measures that they have to meet to receive the funding. So initial thoughts and feedback on that.
Dennis,
I'm not a member of the committee, obviously, so. I think that-
you're sitting at the big table.
I know,
You're
sitting at
speaking
the-
even, so I guess it's all
I
right.
was finally allowed to do that as a kid, you know, when Thanksgiving dinner, I was always at the card table. Anyway, thank you for allowing me to be here, but I wanted to ask a question. Should we just be discussing this kind of stuff in public like we are? I mean, this is all being broadcast over.
So the level of information I'm sharing right now is fine to be shared publicly. Some of the other details that we discussed in executive session have to remain in executive session for the time being.
Thought, okay, and I accept that. I guess a thought occurred to me is whether or not the Appropriations Committee could have had an executive session meeting so that some of this stuff, and as you get more into it, is not going to be read in the newspaper tomorrow and broadcast to our competition. And there are at least one competitor out there in another state, and they know exactly what City of Findlay is proposing. And that's typically the last thing that an economic development professional wants to see. You kind of tip your hand. You've given your competition, shown them your cards. And I guess that's why I was so hesitant to even concur with having an appropriations committee. But you, I think, if I read the minutes correctly, said that the Economic Development Group, the Alliance, thought that it was not necessary, that our commitment in the executive session a month or two ago was enough for the company. And so I have concern, I guess, about this discussion being so public.
Yeah, you know, when you're dealing with economic development and negotiating, trying to keep things, you keeping your cards close to the chest is always wise. I think, you know, we've got to be cautious of what we're sharing in this meeting, but I also think, given that this is not something that we regularly do, it's beneficial for the public to be aware and have a better understanding of what goes into a decision and commitment like this. So as we did discuss at the last meeting, which I kind of have in the slide, it's as Plan B. Plan B is not doing the appropriation and just providing a letter of commitment to complete it. But in my opinion, given that they are interested in moving forward, I think making the appropriation shows how dedicated we are to it. And if something happens, just like we put here, then we can de-appropriate. But I think it sends a really strong signal to them. So I would prefer just moving forward with the appropriation rather than just a letter of commitment. Because if we do a letter of commitment, we're going to be right back to this discussion, you know,
Right.
2 weeks later.
2 weeks later, maybe after the company has said, yes, we'll locate the Findlay, now will you appropriate the funds?
Correct.
And that,
And that could, you know, if they're, so I think just keeping it expedited and showing our commitment is beneficial at this point.
you're the mayor, obviously. I will concede to your decisions, and even though as a former economic development person, I would have hated to see this stuff in the newspaper like it was, because you know everybody else is reading it as well.
You can stay at the big table.
Thank you.
We'll
Don't
allow
it. To the hallway. Thank you.
Dennis, I think,
I thought you said something to me.
no, I said to the
The
hall.
hallway.
Not hallway.
That was to me then too.
No.
Don't worry, we're not sending you guys
Not
to the
yet.
hallway.
Yeah.
We did leave the door, so people
Okay,
know they
good.
can come. Yep,
Dennis, I think you make a very good point. It's a fine line that we walk here between too much information, not enough. Give them a good enough feeling about where we're at, where we stand in this process versus not enough. We certainly want to give the potential company here as much good feeling. Oh, there we go.
I was just doing this so that the feed online is looking at what we're discussing.
Okay, so that we give them as much of a good feeling as possible as we can, and still at the same time protecting the taxpayers who are funding this work. So that was my goal in the conversation to start with. And so Mayor, going back, you're saying that so the city to begin construction on the infrastructure improvements would have to receive a copy of the executed Jobs Ohio grant agreement. So can you tell us what the Jobs Ohio grant agreement has in it or what it looks like?
Yeah, so I requested a copy of that. They didn't have, they weren't willing to share that specific one with us, but they did provide an example of another one. And it talks about, that you'll be operational by a certain period of time, that you will meet the employee, a number of employees that you said. So I think, within 5 years, 750 employees, some of those payroll marks, those different items that obviously impact our decision-making process. So they'll have some of that detail.
And the suitor, Patrick, they have to sign that prior to, what's the timeline on that agreement being signed?
Yeah, so my understanding is that would probably be end of July, early August, because that's when they say to get the funds towards this improvement, that would have to make a commitment.
From Jobs Ohio.
Correct.
Okay.
When do they get it?
Well, then
Just
it would come to us,
immediately.
because because it goes to the infrastructure investment. So instead of it going to the company, it's kind of, they're saying, it's like the $629, like the ODOT money is $629. So Jobs Ohio is saying, to bring you here, we will help make this commitment to get this done.
Right. So really, we're just piggybacking off of the fact that they're completing they're signing their agreement with Jobs Ohio, and we're going to take that as proof that they're going to go forward.
Right.
Correct?
Because then they
So-
would have to pay us, they would have to pay Jobs Ohio funds and turn those funds to us if they didn't follow through. Because that would have the Barbara provision.
So
It's mine.
that's the Jobs Ohio money.
Correct.
Has nothing to do with our 3 million that we're discussing here.
Well, because it's $1.1 million, the Jobs Ohio money for the project is going to come to us to do the infrastructure.
But that is because that's the total project is 4.1,
4.4.
4.4, excuse me. And ours is 300,000.
And then Jobs Ohio is 1.1 and ODOT's 300,000.
300,000, sorry, I forgot the ODOT 300K in there. So really, we're not named in the Jobs Ohio grant. This 300,000, 3 million, excuse me, now I got completely mixed up. Our 3 million is not named in the Jobs Ohio grant.
Correct.
So again, we're just using this as a proxy for their agreement to do what they said they're going to do.
Correct.
Okay.
So, I think I did draft up some clawback language that we could include tied to our investment. However, given that we haven't been able to discuss a specific number with them, I'm a little hesitant to put
Yeah.
something in there that then we're gonna have to potentially renegotiate or would cause. So I think the big thing from my perspective is based off of our knowledge of where the potential investment would occur and the fact that there is potential for further investment in that area. We can come back at a later date and kind of evaluate the whole area again and whether we want to make the investment. But from my perspective, if we get this horse out of the barn, making this investment is going to pay off in that area regardless. So I wouldn't expect it to be, if anything, I would probably say like 30% clawback on that, because again, I think it's going to be beneficial to the community in the long run.
Yeah, along those lines, another non-member of the committee is just speaking, is again, without saying where this is happening. You can see potential, and if Project Captrick was not there, you would look at doing this development or this investment just for the potential of it. You might finance it different. You might not just, and you wouldn't have the jobs so high, potentially the state's 1.4 coming into it. And still, there's benefit to unlocking some of this territory. And so how do you juggle that?
Understood.
Well, that's a good point, because if we if we do this and Patrick doesn't move forward,
Somebody else will.
we in essence are getting the Jobs Ohio money regardless, because we're not paying that upfront cost. So really, we're getting to do the project for $1 million less. They just have to pony up to make Jobs Ohio whole. We really still receive the benefit.
Yeah, you get your $4.4 million infrastructure for three.
So
For three.
For 3 million. Yeah, our 3 million remains, but with no potential payback
Correct.
At this time.
at this time. Correct.
I think there's,
Sorry.
Well, that's what I was gonna say originally, because I forgot about the Jobs Ohio money. I was gonna say exactly what Grant did, based on the fact that we think that there may be other potential investment that could happen there. Seems to me maybe we would just want to go ahead with this anyway, so that we're ready when we have another opportunity or an additional opportunity if this one does go through. But then I thought, well, I don't know if I can say that because I don't know what happens with the $1 million. So are you saying we get the $1 million regardless, that the company pays back to Jobs Ohio and we just have a $3 million?
that would be my understanding. I can validate that because Jobs Ohio is paying the investment. All that would happen is that the company would have to pay Jobs Ohio back.
they're paying us 100% upfront because they're signing the contract.
Yeah,
It's
once,
not like we're getting a raise.
once the project starts,
Right.
it's going to completion.
Right. So if they sign the contract, they're gonna be due that.
It's kind of like the bike trail. Do it about half to the completion and they'll use.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't, if say we're mid-build, they're not going, and they do pull out or they decide not to, the roadway's still gonna go in. So like what the mayor was saying, we would still see that money. It was just now Jobs Ohio would have to deal with the company to get their money back. But the project will still move forward pretty much as soon as they say we're coming and we start the project. And then the next day they say, never mind, we're not coming. Well, it's already like, it's already being built. You signed and went.
Yeah, and I think in that situation, Jeremy, I'm in total agreement with you. That, they signed the agreement, we put a shovel in the ground, at that point, we're committed, we're going. I'm looking at this prior to. Between now and mid-July, which is kind of their deadline, they decide no. That's what I'm guarding against. And here's the problem that I've got with, it's not a problem, this is what we give up. If we approve this and it goes through anyway, let's say that they pull out on January 15th and we say, fine, we're still gonna do this. What we lose is the ability to negotiate or choose who's going to take that property. Because now, one of the reasons that we're very happy about this investment is the type of investment that it is. In executive session, not talking about any additional information, but we have, if this was a different type of business, one of which we have a lot of out there already, we may have looked at this differently. However, we know that this plant is bringing to us a fair amount of very high-paying jobs, manufacturing facility. Those are all things that we know of. And if we go ahead and make this investment and annex the property, we lose that stick, if you will, in the negotiation of what type of business goes in there.
In this situation, you have that for one part of what you're potentially opening up. Let's say you have, I'm just really off the top of my head, 25% of it, you have that say, but you're opening up 75% or land that you don't have that say on, really. I mean,
Why don't we? Why don't we?
Because it's private property.
Yeah, because it's private
Well,
property.
but you're,
Right, but we have to annex it in too, to make this work. We have to agree to all those pieces and parts.
and that's part of the strategic plan. That's, so Grant asked the question, we have this project that we have a potential of getting $1 million either way, right? Well, we never even really discussed if that's the best location in our community to put that investment for the next 10 years. Is it or isn't it? It might be, it might not be. I think the other question, I think it's great that we always focus on the money and what we can get for free. But we had an article in the paper in April that talked about one of our companies using migrant workers. We had DeWine recently, Jobs Ohio, I believe is where it was running through, where they're promoting migrant workers to come in to fill a lot of jobs, right? So then that comes into, if we have a shortage and we don't have those numbers that we need according to that Courier article, and we can't fill them, is that what we're gonna be bringing in? And if that's what we're bringing in, good or bad, is that what we want in our community? Where are we gonna put these folks? We don't have the housing market, we don't have for the 58,000 or higher jobs, and we don't have it for the lower jobs. So there's more here to plan for. We have to think about our current businesses that are here that we already know everybody's kind of battling, right? Is that fair to them? And what if we lose one of them because we bring, there's a lot more than, hey, can we get $1 million for free? And I think we need that question answered. Where are we filling these positions from?
So I appreciate all the points you're bringing up, and, you know, obviously each of those is an important key. One, I would say employers have a responsibility to figure out how they're going to meet their needs. Some choose to bring in, you know, workers on visas, some modify their benefit packages, some work to find efficiencies within the, you know, operations to automate certain structures. I think that, you know, each business has to make that decision. I think when we look at our workforce shed, Findlay has a really good opportunity to continue to bring people into our market. And I understand we definitely need more workers, but I think that it would be misrepresenting our region if we said that we had a workforce shortage. I think
I didn't say it. Economic Development said it when we had a Courier front page article, so.
No, the newspaper said it. Economic Development recognizes that there's a whole opportunity to bring in.
But do we want that opportunity? What do we want Findlay to be in the next 10 years?
Got a better answer.
So, yeah, I agree. We need to bring, that's one of the reasons that we're trying to bring in high-paying, beneficial jobs to our market, which helps develop and continue and make investments in infrastructure in areas that are going to open up those opportunities for other, you know, businesses. I guess I just wanted to make sure, again, given that this is a public meeting and people can, I don't want somebody walking away and the front page of the newspaper being, we don't have the people or the housing to accommodate.
I'm
Now
just addressing.
I'm responding to the concerns where we need them. And so definitely we need housing, and I think that that's a bigger conversation for us to have. That has been part of strategic planning, and now that we're finally getting to a point to actually start digging into the meat and potatoes, I think that that will be a much deeper conversation. I think related to this project specifically, this is a decision for council to say, is this a business we want to bring in? Do we recognize this as an area of opportunity? And given that it's a 6-year return on investment, is this a great test opportunity for us to put it out there that we're willing and open to working with businesses to make investments to attract them here, which I think then helps tell a better story to the public and to businesses who may potentially, you know, come to our community. So from my perspective, it kind of checks all the boxes, and though we haven't had specific discussions on like incentives and different things like that, I think when we look at all of the different things that we offer, that has proven to be beneficial, and we can look at continuing to evaluate that. But like we said at, you know, last Tuesday's meeting, are we wanting to walk away from this project just so we can have more conversation? And I think
I didn't say walk away. I think they're a great company, so don't misunderstand. I think they're fantastic. It's, can we do it? The whole picture. How does the whole picture look? And that's what I think is part of the decision-making on this project. The whole picture, not just the document.
that's what I do every single day, is looking at all the different aspects of the city every single day. So I totally get it. Good question.
Any other questions concerning the language that the mayor's put forward? Mayor, could you bring that back up?
Jeff, doesn't this ultimately get to you trust the, you know, if the thing doesn't come through, it just takes 2 of us on council to put in legislation to
Deal. Agreed.
come from the administration, or, and I'll promise you, if you will join me, I will co-sponsor such legislation if it doesn't go through, although then I think the discussion then goes into, do you consider doing
Longer
it
term.
longer and paying for it in a different manner, but
And that's a good discussion to have at that point.
yeah,
Right.
but I have enough trust in the administration that if this doesn't go through, we're not gonna spend the money unless it makes sense.
Yeah.
And at the time that it doesn't go through, we're back having this conversation, maybe with economic development sitting at the table, saying what they see.
And go more towards what Paul
Yeah.
was saying.
Yeah,
Agreed.
What do you think about the dollar amount appropriation of where you're pulling from? I mean, I know we're talking, there's a lot of stuff happening in sewer right now, water things. I know Christina talked about eventually we're gonna be increasing some water rates. You know, should we be pulling maybe from the general / ARPA funds more than from the water and sewer side?
Yeah, so I'd be happy to address this. So from the sewer and storm, as we look at its projection, we're able to pay for this investment out of there. With the just straight sewer, we're in a healthy position there, so not a concern. On the water fund, I would recommend pulling it from there, but then we're gonna have a broader conversation about the water fund and maybe making additional investment from the general fund to water. And then based off of conversations and recommendations from the auditor and kind of the discussion that we had, instead of pulling it from the capital fund, we did just pull it from the general fund. Obviously, we're in a strong position there, and so it made sense to just keep the capital fund protected for some other projects.
is ARPA dollars possible?
We really already have those earmarked for things. So when we were putting together capital, you may recall that we already had kind of a line item of those. So not all of them have been appropriated, but those funds are in essence already spent.
We had the 400K for the demolition thing. Are we expecting that to come back, or is that? I mean, that's what I was thinking on.
Yeah, we could potentially, we are gonna revisit that and have a discussion around how those dollars can be spent. I think continuing to invest those in kind of neighborhood cleanup type items is probably my preference, but it would pretty much be general fund dollars anyways, because we did it with the revenue replacement, so it would be kind of have that, however that saying goes.
Money fund.
You see the $2 million number that I mentioned in council one meeting that says ARPA funds is a line item. That's unappropriated. What is that to?
Yeah,
whatever?
I'm happy to send you the spreadsheet that we presented. and
So you're just saying it's,
discussed.
so it's not appropriated. We have it earmarked, but we're not. gonna-
Correct, yeah, because we have
So
to,
it can change.
yes, it could, but we already have a plan for a variety of things. Correct. A lot of the water and sewer capital investments.
Very good. You gotta lose your seat at the table.
That was my alarm.
At least you're not at Rotary and get charged $20.
Mary, could you bring up the language one more time?
Yep.
Thank you. So I would make a motion that we adopt the language that the mayor is showing us here, which adds in the additional language, making this project contingent on the execution of the Jobs Ohio grant agreement. I would make that motion.
So
It's a motion. Second, further discussion. The one thing I would ask, Mayor, you said you have a copy of a draft, not a draft of this, but another one. Without us seeing that, you're comfortable with the language that's in there. I would
Very
expect
good,
that
yeah.
it's, I'm sure it's very good. So, all right, since we won't see that in this,
yeah, and I can try to mock up a copy of it, removing some of the information that they had, but I would expect that, here in the next couple weeks, we'll have a copy of that.
this covers my concerns that I brought up in council meeting. Does anybody else have anything else further to throw out? Very good. With that, motion on the table to approve as written here, and Mayor, you would take and either amend or send us a whole new
Yes,
ordinance with this language. All those in favor of that being done, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. I will, with that, we will conclude the meeting, unless anybody else has any other topics for this committee. Very good.